Our next guest on Talking Heads has an absolutely captivating lightness of spirit, which you might find surprising when you hear her incredible story. Jan Ruff O'Herne was 21 when in 1942 she was captured by the Japanese and forced into a military brothel. It was an experience she kept hidden for 50 years until she launched into a journey of truth and healing late in life. Jan, it's very good to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too, Peter.
Thanks for coming on Talking Heads. Jan, you are one of the first of 3 women that came forward and told the terrible story of the Japanese and their mass rapes during the Second World War. On balance, what has been the positive and what's been the negative of having the courage to come forward?
There's no negative at all. It's all been positive right from the start. It was the right time in 1992 to speak out. All the comfort women, there's a real euphemism for military sex slave, we all kept silent for 50 years, and then all of a sudden, the 3 of us, I first saw the Korean comfort women, and then myself, and we spoke out. That was the right time.
You talk about the shame that you and hundreds of thousands of women carried about this, and on the other hand, there's the truth.
Yeah.
There's a seesaw between shame and truth.
Yeah.
Is the truth winning?
The truth is winning now. Yes, the truth is winning. Because all of a sudden, after 50 years, we had the courage to shed the shame.
What did it mean for your family, you coming forward?
My family supported me in every way. And it was wonderful for them that I told this story, And my daughters were so proud of me. And Carol said, Mom, I wish you would have told me this before. I could have put my arms around you. Why couldn't you have told us before? But now I told the story, and it brought our family so very, very close.
Well, you can't have been sure when you did come forward, even with your own family, that people would accept what you said and would accept you.
It was a risk I had to take, but I was afraid. And then to have the enormous relief when I'd spoken out, to be received back among your friends and my parish, and be welcomed and embraced, and flowers put on my seat in the church, when I first went to Mass. And it was a wonderful reception I had, It was good. Sometimes God asks of us late in life to do an amazing task. And this has come to me late in life, Without my faith, I couldn't have even survived the time that I was in the comfort stations, My faith has always been the backbone of my whole life. I was born in the former Dutch East Indies, which is now called Indonesia. I grew up on a sugar plantation estate. It was just a good, loving childhood. My mother and father were very much in love. I can remember they would sit at night on the sofa, and they would be holding hands. Well, my father was an amateur photographer, and so he used to, do a lot of filming. And these films were then sent to Holland, to the family in Holland. And that's why they were preserved, because during the war we lost everything in Java, everything. This film was taken in 1931. That's my grandfather Henry holding my little sister Fien. This is Auntie Bets. This is my Uncle Tom. This is my father's brother Henry and his wife Corrie. This is my father and mother, my beautiful Aunt Lodi, my father's sister, my cousin Luke, my cousin Henny, my cousin Frauke, my brother Bart, my sister Aline, and that is me at the age of 8. When I think of my youth and growing up in Java, It's my grandfather I think of most of all, because all our holidays were spent at this beautiful holiday resort he had in the mountains. And we used to often go there at weekends, but all the holidays were spent there. We had a wonderful time. There were 2 swimming pools, 2 tennis courts. We used to climb the mountains, and he was just such a lovely man. I always think, when I go to heaven, I want it to be like my grandfather's place in Bandungan, you know.
Seeing that film brings back memories.
It sure does bring back memories. Yes. I had such a wonderful childhood growing up in the Dutch East Indies. Yeah. Such a privileged childhood I had.
The Christian faith, which has obviously been a very important thing for you right through your life, that actually your grandfather strongly held a religious faith,
my grandfather.
How did that inspire you?
It's what you see in your home that continues for the rest of your life. In my family, like my grandfather, before we'd go to say goodnight to him, he would put a little cross on our foreheads, and my father continued that. Yeah, I loved my faith, and I loved the nuns, you know, behind their veil and the habit. They looked so pious and special and beautiful, and all of us as teenagers, we all wanted to become nuns.
Well, you
stage.
I don't know whether all of them did, but you did, didn't you?
Yeah, but a lot of them, yeah. So I certainly did.
So you held this idea of becoming a nun?
Yes, I did, from a very young age. My father was very religious. You know, he would read scripture to us and explain a lot of theology to us. He was right into it and made sure we said our prayers together and the rosary and all that I got from the start. Yeah.
Well, after the children had gone to bed, your parents would stay on singing.
Well, of course, with no television in those days, not even a radio. And we were all a very musical family. My father played the violin, absolutely excellent, and my mother was a very good pianist. And sometimes we used to shout from our beds, you know, we want this or we want that, you know, sing this. And so we were a very happy household.
Now, did politics intrude on this life at all? Do you remember that as a child?
No, we never talked.
No discussion that it couldn't last, the situation you were in?
No, not an inkling. And we didn't have riots or anything like that. You know, it was just very harmoniously living.
A number of Japanese started moving into the area, didn't they?
Oh, yes. They were getting ready already. Our hairdressers would be Japanese people. Your photographer would be a Japanese person. And they were moving in fast already. They were already there, being spies, getting ready for the invasion. The first time I saw a Japanese soldier was when a truck with Japanese military arrived in Bandungan and we had to all register. Then after that, the next thing was that we were rounded up and all put in prison camps. I love drawing, so I made sure in my case I put some colored pencils and some watercolors. And I always loved this one where this is the way we had to bow, you know. Yes, at the right angle, and if it wasn't right, you were punished, you know, beaten or whatever. We had a music teacher there, and she wanted to form a choir, so we were all very eager to join the choir. And so that's why all my life I've been singing in a choir, and I've been singing here in the Kingswood Choir since 1964. We often had inspections in our camp. So one day, one of these trucks arrived again, and we thought, another inspection. But only the young girls from 17 years up to about 28 had to line up in the compound. So we then realized this was different. They just walked up and down the line, and then some girls were told they could get back. Until in the end, there was only 10 girls left standing, and I was one of the 10. and I remember waving, to my mother and all the others until the truck drove away. And then the truck pulled up in front of a large Dutch colonial house. And they told us that we were in this house for the sexual pleasure of the Japanese military. In other words, we found ourselves in a brothel. Every night we would be hiding somewhere, but there was only so many hiding places in this house. We were all virgins, we were such innocent girls. And the horror of the opening night of the brothel has tortured my mind all my life. I wanted to remember these girls for always. So one morning when we sat on the veranda, I got my pencils out and I did some pencil sketches of the girls, I couldn't stand to receive flowers for many, many years because flowers were still associated with that first night in the brothel when they put flowers in our bedroom. And it was not until after I'd spoken out, and was able to tell it all to the world, that the healing started. And now I just love flowers.
Jan, you went to great lengths to make yourself seem unattractive, which must have been quite difficult to achieve, actually.
Yeah, you sort of try every trick, you try everything, what can I do? I thought I cut off all my hair and, make myself quite bold looking and ugly. I remember looking in the mirror and thought, well, I'm really ugly now, nobody will want me. So it was amazing how it had the opposite effect. It became a curiosity object.
This brothel you were in was run by a woman, wasn't it?
Well, we thought when a woman arrived on the scene, we thought, well, a woman will understand, We were so glad of a woman. But the war had turned her into a hard person. She had no pity on us whatsoever. So,
how did you girls find strength in each other?
We did. We really needed each other. And they sort of looked to me to give them strength through my faith and through prayer. I used to pray with the girls. There was one Catholic girl too, and we used to say the rosary. And God knows how many rosaries we prayed together. And when I met Lies after 50 years, I met her in Holland again. And the first thing we said, how many rosaries did we pray together? But this is what helped us to get through this period.
At the end of this ordeal, you have another, really. You're taken back to camps. You're reunited with your mother.
Yes, reunited with my mother. And I had to tell her the story. I told her the first night to be reunited with your mother after you've been through what I've been through. And then to be embraced by your mother and feel the safety of your mother's arms. And I'll never forget at night laying in the hollow of her arms with her arms around me, and she just stroked my bald head. And we didn't have to say anything that night. I just laid there in the loving security of my mother's arms. And then the next day I told her. But it was never talked about again. It was just too much. And this is the one thing we really needed, to be able to talk about it, and it never happened. Well, we'd been in prison camp for 3.5 years. Then one day we saw some planes, and they were Allied planes. And we got so excited. And leaflets were dropped from the sky that said that, be patient, the war will soon be over. And then a terrible time came. The Indonesian people wanted their freedom, their independence from the Dutch. So the Indonesian freedom fighters, they started to attack the camps. The situation got so bad, they had to send some Allied troops to protect us. And that is how I met Tom. There's a very romantic war romance. We got married in England in 1946. And of course, you know, we would like to start a family. But I had 3 miscarriages. The damage that had been done to my body during the war was so great. So I then had some surgery done. And after that, I sort of was okay and produced 2 beautiful daughters, Eileen and Carol. I lived in England for 14 years with Tom. We lived in the outskirts of Birmingham. And we were very happy, but then we saw these advertisements in the paper. So we became what we now call 10-pound poms. And this was in 1960, and we have never regretted coming to Australia.
That must have been such a turnaround from the life that you'd endured during the war to actually find someone with whom you could love.
It was, and what was the most wonderful thing was that when we started to fall in love, and it was a very short courtship, but when we knew we were falling in love...
Funny sort of courtship.
I had to tell Tom my story. I felt I had to tell him what happened, and it didn't make any difference to Tom at all.
In a way, it seems like that must have been the moment that locked in a lifelong love.
Yes, it did.
It's that acceptance of you.
Yeah, it was a total acceptance. And he was such a gentle person. Yeah,
not everyone did accept your story because you went forward and told a priest that you'd held this long-held idea about becoming a nun.
Yeah. I told him I still want to become a nun because I still have a vocation. I want to enter the religious life. And I remember his words. I can still remember word for word. He said, "Under the circumstances, I think it's better that you not become a nun." And that made me feel, you know, so terrible. I was still soiled. I was still dirty. I was different. I was not good enough. And this is when I told Tom what had happened to me, just the opposite happened. You know, Tom listened to my story. And when I finished my story, he said, "You're beautiful." And it didn't make any difference to him. And that is why it was so precious, you know. When I met Tom, I realized straight away that his love for music, and it's the same in our family. I grew up with music. And of course, this is Tom's clarinet. God bless him. I can never part with this. I can just see him playing it, you know, putting it together, getting it ready, putting in the mouthpiece, you know, licking it first. We used to play together, me on the piano and he on the clarinet, which was a lot of fun. In 1975, our whole life was just turned upside down. Tom was crossing the road by the traffic lights and knocked down. And so when I got to the hospital, he was just lying there in a coma. Tubes going everywhere, you know, and they told me that he had severe brain damage. He never picked up his clarinet again. It just wasn't there anymore. Tom died in 1995, 20 years after he had the accident. Tom was the only one that knew my secret until I spoke out in 1992. In Tokyo in 1992, there was an international forum on Japanese war crimes. And they wanted witnesses to speak at this forum. And I was the first European woman to speak out.
Even after almost 50 years, I still experience this feeling of total fear going through my body and through all my limbs, burning me up.
My son-in-law at the time, Ned Lander, wanted to make the documentary 50 Years of Silence. So we went to Holland and it was all arranged there to meet with some of the other Dutch girls that had been with me in the same house.
How are you?
Dat ben jij toen je 18 jaar was.
Ja.
Weet je dat te herinneren?
Jannie heeft er verschrikkelijk onder geleden, want ik weet hoe ze was toen ze daar in het... Ze was helemaal gek, gek van angst. Echt waar, dat weet ik. Want ik weet wat ze gedaan heeft. Ze heeft haar haar afgeknipt en dat smoeltje, dat wezenloze gezichtje. Ik zie het nog voor me. Echt waar. Echt waar. Jannie, sorry dat ik je dat weer aan moet doen.
Very healing for me. Yeah.
When you came forward with your story, along with the other women, and were able to embrace the other women, how did that allow you to move on then? When you say you still have nightmares about it?
Yeah, it does. It helps you to move on, and healing starts. But it doesn't take away the damage that's been done, that you carry within you. I mean, I had a nightmare just about a week ago, you know? And you wake up and you've been through it again. And this has never left me.
That first time in Tokyo, and you've been there 3 times, when you looked at the Japanese as they heard your story, as they heard the story of the other women, what did you see? What responses did you see?
Well, when I spoke out in Japan, the first thing I told the Japanese people, that I didn't come with hate and anger. To prove that I'd come with forgiveness, I had brought a wreath of forgiveness with me all the way from Australia. My daughter Carol and myself, we made this wreath out of Australian wildflowers, and it was a wreath of forgiveness. And I told the Japanese people and the media that I wanted to lay this at the tomb of the Japanese unknown soldier. And then I met this new generation of young Japanese people that were so generous and so kind and so good. I was received absolutely marvelously. I was given gifts. So I felt that there is a new generation that wants to know the truth.
Of course, you didn't just tell your story in Tokyo. You went to Washington. Did that take you by surprise?
I was invited to speak at a congressional meeting in Washington. That was the pinnacle of it all. And in my old age, I can still pull it off. I have forgiven the Japanese for what they did to me. But I can never forget. What was so amazing about the Washington event, for the first time, a government found it important enough to take up the issue of the comfort women and ask Japan to officially apologize. This had never happened before. When Random House approached me when I came back from Washington to revise the book, I jumped at the chance. And I had more time. And I had done so much over the last 15 years that there was so much more to write about. It is a wonderful feeling to have the church so close, and the church is my whole social life. Yeah, I love being involved. People often ask me, how long have I been making these banners? I've been making them for years. It's become quite a hobby, and I love doing it. And the banners are usually in connection with the gospel of that Sunday. So I've got a different banner for every Sunday. This is one of my favorite banners. It speaks of God's love. We see God's love in all creation. I'm a secular Franciscan, and like St. Francis, I love animals, birds especially, and flowers, and we can see God all around us if we just look at nature. When I look at my granddaughter, I remember when she was 21, the same age, that I was so brutally abused by the Japanese. I looked at her and I thought I couldn't imagine anything happening to her that happened to me. So, and now I'm going to be a great-grandmother. All you wish for is for them to live in a world of peace, and that's why we got to tell our stories. To Emma's baby! To the baby! To Emma's baby. Emma, to your baby. Yes.
It would be impossible to watch this program and not ask yourself, as a viewer, how could I possibly endure such a thing? How would have I come out? So Why did you come out of this so strongly?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. I'm just a happy person, I suppose. And life is beautiful. And if you see life as beautiful, then it is beautiful. And, you know, in all the pain and suffering, you can still come out of it beautiful. Yeah, there's always something to celebrate.
Jan, it's been wonderful talking to you.
It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you. Thank you very much.